What's up guys, I'm Theo Joe, and with Windows 7 officially dead, having reached its end of life, I recently talked about the need to upgrade to Windows 10, and unsurprisingly, a lot of people got really mad, acting like upgrading to Windows 10 would be worse than death, though it might have partially been because of the slightly sarcastic title. Now, I personally think Windows 10 is a fine operating system. Not like, yeah, awesome, like I thought about Windows 7 on release, but I definitely don't think it deserves all the hate it gets. That being said, I do understand why some people hate it, and they have some good reasons. So we can go over those reasons, and also why they're not such a big deal in my opinion, and how Windows 10 isn't as bad as it used to be when it was initially released, and why you might want to consider giving it a chance. Before we get started, let me give my quick shameless plug for my truly amazing Instagram account, where I post the most amazing tech memes and cool pictures. You'll literally die of amazement and laughter if you go on there, so be sure to check that out. It's just @TheoJoe over on Instagram. And with that out of the way, let's get into this. So if you ask people why they don't want to get Windows 10, you'll get a huge variety of answers, but there are a few that really cause the bulk of the concerns, which I'll first just name, and then we can address them in greater detail. And remember, I actually agree with all these, I just want to show how all these issues can be fixed with not too much effort. It seems to me the absolute biggest flaws people hate in Windows 10 have to do with privacy and data collection, and also the forced updates, especially when combined with the poor quality control on those updates. The other major reason people cite as their reason for hating Windows 10 is the terrible bloatware, along with Cortana, which some might consider both a privacy issue and bloatware. Alright, so first let's talk about Windows 10's privacy issues. You've probably heard that Windows 10 spies on you and collects all sorts of information, and Windows does do a form of data collection called telemetry, which is the root cause of these complaints. Telemetry collects things like diagnostic info for like errors, logs of frequently used programs and features, stuff like that. None of which is supposedly supposed to contain any personal information that can be used to identify you. From Microsoft's perspective, this data allows them to identify problems with Windows itself and its features, so they can identify and fix them without relying on people to submit feedback just to find out about them. It can also fix issues users don't even know is a bug at all. For example, maybe a specific program crashes when a user runs it, but then they just run it again and it works fine, so the user forgets about it. But Microsoft could see that the same crash happened to 1 million people, so even though for each user it's not a big deal, it's actually a big widespread problem they otherwise wouldn't have known was even happening. They also can use the data to tell which features people use the most or which settings people change the most so that they can know what to prioritize. Now, on the other hand, from a user perspective, a ton of people simply don't want a company collecting any data about what they're doing, even if it's not apparently personally identifying. It's very understandable, and I actually fall into this camp, or I don't like any data collection on my devices. But fortunately, there are several ways you can reduce or disable the collection. The easiest way to limit the collection is to go to the settings, privacy, and then diagnostics and feedback, then change the diagnostic setting from full to basic. This won't stop it completely, but definitely reduces it a lot. To completely stop it, there are several ways, but the easiest way is probably to use a free program I made an entire video about before called Shut Up 10, and I highly recommend that video, which I'll have pop up here and we'll also put in the description. I won't go too in-depth into it here, but it's a program made by the reputable O&O software company, which lets you easily disable lots of settings in Windows 10, including data collection and privacy settings you'd normally have to mess around in the registry to change, so definitely recommend it. Now, the other biggest reason I see so many people hating on Windows 10 has to do with the forced updates, especially considering Microsoft's history of absolutely terrible quality control and testing history for many of these updates. This one is very understandable because Microsoft has repeatedly released major feature updates that broke things, though these feature updates should not be confused with security updates, which are very important. One infamous example was the October 2018 update Microsoft pushed out that was deleting tons of files in certain directories for certain users, and nobody knew why at first. This forced Microsoft to pull the update almost immediately and permanently damaged Windows 10 reputation when it comes to major updates. And I can definitely relate to this because it does seem like after every major feature update, which occurs about twice a year, I do come across weird software and stability issues for a few weeks until the kinks are ironed out. All that being said though, there is very good news. You may not have realized that as of the May 2019 update, Microsoft has changed how major updates are pushed out, fixing one of the biggest reasons people are holding off, at least in my opinion. You see, Windows 10 will no longer force you to install the big major feature updates that are released twice a year, and typically these are the main cause of new issues and bugs. Now, in Windows Update, it will only install the big updates if you manually choose to, but can still get all the minor quality of life updates like bug fixes and security updates. You'll be able to delay these major updates until your current release version reaches its end of life, which is about after 18 months. So you can now basically delay these major, often problematic updates by over a year, and by then any bugs should be ironed out. So if this was the main reason you didn't like the idea of Windows 10, there might be no more reason to worry. Also, keep in mind, if you use Windows 10 Pro, which is an extra $100 to upgrade from the home version, you can exactly control how often you receive both feature and security updates separately. I personally keep the feature updates delayed by at least 2 months or so, but do not delay security updates, and don't think you should either. If you're curious about the other differences between Windows 10 Home and Pro, I also made that video, which I'll have pop up here if you want to watch that after. Okay, moving on to the next reason, we have pre-installed bloatware. Few things are more annoying than freshly installing Windows 10 and then seeing your start menu full of crap, including Candy Crush and literal advertisements for dumb apps. But these can easily be disabled right away. Programs like Candy Crush can be uninstalled from the list of apps in the settings, and for the ads, which Windows calls suggestions, they can be disabled in the start menu settings by just disabling the setting to show suggestions on start. And then there's Cortana, Microsoft's virtual assistant, which some people hate for several reasons. They may find it simply annoying as well as concerning in terms of privacy, and are suspicious of letting yet another virtual assistant keep track of their questions and searches. I myself have Cortana disabled because I never use it. Unfortunately, it's hard to disable completely without Windows 10 Pro, but not impossible in Home either. In Home, it requires editing the registry, which is not recommended if you're not familiar with that sort of thing, so you'll have to just look up how to do that if you want. But in any case, you can at least prevent it from tracking most data right in the Cortana and search settings. So yeah, Windows 10 definitely isn't perfect, but most of the biggest complaints can be fixed and only requires doing so once and you're done. And I can see why many people using Windows 7 might say, well, why should I have to go through all that hassle? Windows 7 works fine. But if you know me, I'm a security nut, and I don't think it's worth continuing to use an insecure operating system just because you aren't willing to spend an hour getting Windows 10 how you want. And remember, you can still upgrade from 7 to 10 for free, despite Microsoft not advertising that, so just Google how to do that. It's very easy. Now, despite all the issues we've talked about, I think Windows 10 has lots of great features making it worth using. First of all, it is more secure. Not just because it gets regular security updates, but it also has better security features in general. For example, it has exploit protection built into the OS, which used to require separate software called the Enhanced Mitigation Experience Toolkit. It also even has built-in ransomware protection you can enable. There's also plenty of features previous versions never had, including DirectX 12 for games, and other little features like clipboard history and clipboard syncing. Also, being the latest Windows OS, it has better driver and software support, and with Windows 7 now out of service, developers and hardware manufacturers might not focus on Windows 7, so things might not work quite as well with it going forward. And this one is just in my opinion, but I actually like the new start menu and think it took the best parts of previous versions, unlike Windows 8, which was an absolute abomination and only had the tiles, while Windows 10 brought back the list of apps on the left like you saw in Windows 7, but also lets you pin tiles for shortcuts to anything on the right side, or remove any tiles and arrange it all however you want. So at this point, if you're still a holdout for Windows 7, perhaps this video alleviated your concerns on upgrading to Windows 10, or at least just when it comes to the most common deal breakers. Obviously, I can't address every single complaint people have, and I'm sure in the comments, plenty of you will have other more specific issues you have when it comes to Windows 10, and at the end of the day, it's just up to you, but I just want to make sure you're fully informed on why you upgrade or not. But anyway, if you guys want to keep watching, here's a couple videos I mentioned earlier about that Shut Up 10 software and differences between Windows 10 Home and Pro. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.